Everyone thought his skill was useless. Telekinesis? Seriously? But when he was betrayed and killed, the goddess gave him a second chance. 2,000 years of training. Now he returns to show what he can do. Will he be able to take revenge and change his destiny? Let's find out. The story begins with Eric Kinesis standing proudly alone against an entire army. A voice from the crowd, amazing. He is going to handle them all alone. Someone shouted from the crowd, even though he is a celebrity, he cannot handle an entire army. Horror. He disappeared in an instant. The commander commanded, archers, fire. Many arrows flew towards the protagonist at the same time. He turned all the arrows back with one movement of his hand. One of the arrows flew between the eyes of an enemy soldier. Another hit him in the heart. The helmets worn on his head did not help protect him. The arrows hit their target right on target. A cry from the crowd, the vanguard is not coping, so they should be more careful. Fear appeared on the warriors' faces. A soldier asked, "What is happening?" Another answered, "An earthquake." The warrior pointed his finger up and yelled for everyone to look around. A mountain. It can't be, it's taking off. Everything was mixed up in the air. People and boulders rose from the ground. One said, "How powerful, impossible." One of the military leaders suggested that MC was using unusual power. The protagonist walked forward and calmly replied that this was the weakest skill in history. In this world, when a person turns 10 years old, God gives him a blessing. This supports and enriches people's lives. Time passed. Professions and statuses began to depend on the blessing. Only God decides what skills will be granted. The protagonist trained his skill on an apple lying on the table. The apple did not move at all. Over and over again he repeated his hand movements. The Kinesis family's maid, Emma, approached him. Her sewing skill. She praised the hero. The apple moved 1 centimeter further than yesterday. Our hero, Eric Kinesis, the eldest son of the Kinesis family, has the telekinesis skill. He sadly said that this was all he could do. His skill was so useless. He was very angry with himself. Nowadays, a person's worth is determined by their skills. Eric thought out loud. He was a duke, born and raised properly. Emma touched his hand and asked him to raise his head. She reminded him how he promised Lady Rose, his mother, that no matter what skill he was given, he would try his best. Emma held his hand and said that she and the lady in heaven would always support him. Hearing laughter, they both turned their heads. Standing next to him were Rosh Kinesis, the second son of the Kinesis family, who had the sword skill, and Sarissa Kinesis, the eldest daughter of the Kinesis family, who had the magic skill. Rosh told his sister to look at how a loser could use his skills, even meeting such an ugly maid. Sarissa replied that he shouldn't speak so rudely. Eric shouted at his sister and brother not to say such things about Emma. The maid tried to stop him. But in response, Rosh took out his saber and extended his hand forward and told his brother to be careful because his swordsmanship skill. And if he dared to do something reckless, his maid would get hurt. The sister reminded her brother that they would be late for training. Rosh agreed with her and said that they had things to do, unlike his brother, and they were receiving instructions from a teacher worthy of their epic skills. It was time for them to go. As Rosh was leaving, he added that their father wanted to see all the children tonight, and asked if they would see each other later. The protagonist was the eldest son of Duke Kinesis. Despite being a contender for the dukedom, he was an outcast in this family even before he received his powers. The reason is that his father, the duke, did not love the protagonist's mother, who was married for political reasons. She was the only person who ever loved MC, but she died. The protagonist apologized to the maid for his brother's words. Emma put MC to rest and went to get the first aid kit. Eric thought that if his father valued his blessing as highly as his brother and sister's skills, then perhaps he would be accepted into the family. He honed his skill over and over again. The maid asked if the master had seen the apple move. Eric confirmed this and was glad that he was starting to succeed. Later in the evening, a grown man was sitting at the table reading a document. The duke had decided that Eric could no longer lay claim to the duchy and therefore lost his status as heir. The protagonist was indignant that, according to the law, the eldest son should lead the estate. The father clarified that this was only if the heir had the necessary abilities for the duchy. MC did not believe in himself. He was sure that he was nothing special and had a worthless skill. However, his father decided to give him, the son of his first wife, one last chance. He wanted the sons to fight a duel. If Eric wins, the father will recognize him as the heir. But if he loses, then he will have to give the title to the younger son. Although this method is not traditional, Rosh gladly accepted the challenge and asked if his brother was against it. The sister came up to her older brother from behind and smiled slyly. She suggested that if Eric was afraid of Rosh, he could refuse the duel. In this case, no one would judge him. The younger brother loudly asked MC if his brother was going to run away. The father closed his eyes and asked the children to stop this conversation. Eric would make the decision himself. The maid supported the protagonist, believing in him. Eric decided that he was ready to fight his brother. They decided to hold the fight in a large hall with high ceilings. The father suggested using an imitation sword as a weapon, and he said that the first one to admit defeat would lose the fight. Eric hoped that his brother had fencing skills, but he had not yet mastered it, so he still had a chance and he would not give up. The brothers stood at different ends of the hall and looked into each other's eyes. The father gave the order to start the fight. The protagonist rushed towards the enemy with a scream. One move and his sword was lying on the floor. Roche asked if his brother had decided to lose prematurely. Eric was surprised. How did this happen? Not long ago they were equal in fencing skills. Eric got angry. His legs gave way and his body became so heavy that he fell. He realized that his sister had used her skill. MC's throat suddenly constricted. Roche was standing next to him and holding a sword in his hand. He apologized. Eric asked what his brother was asking for forgiveness for. The sword in the winner's hand was sharp. The least the brother could do was let the protagonist die in peace. MC asked for mercy and did not understand why his brother was doing this. Why did no one stop his brother? Did the whole family really expect this from the beginning? Eric opened his eyes and saw a blue sky with clouds. He was sitting on a green lawn, and there were many flowers around him. He did not understand where his wounds had disappeared. Did he really die and go to heaven? Eric didn't think that everyone hated him that much. He didn't care whether he was the heir or not. He just wanted to be part of his family. The protagonist covered his eyes with his hand and thought about his mother and Emma. A beautiful girl with big wings was sitting next to him. She asked MC who Emma was. Eric opened his eyes and was scared. He asked the stranger who she was, where she came from and why she had wings. She happily told him about herself. It was the goddess Peppina. She was sure that the protagonist knew her name and agreed that she was cute. Eric agreed and said that he had heard of such a goddess. Peppina asked if he could tell him everything he knew about her. He tried to remember everything he knew. The goddess Peppina created the world in which everyone lives. But outwardly, she was not at all like the one depicted in picture books or sculptures. MC felt a tense atmosphere. Peppina explained to him what was happening. In short, he was between life and death. He is a soul that almost died and by a lucky chance got to this place. It is a rare phenomenon that happens only once every few thousand years. Peppina asked if she needed to tell him all the details. In response, MC just nodded his head. The beautiful but a little strange girl was actually a goddess. She understood that the protagonist wanted to admire her, but decided to get down to business. She raised him with her hands up and asked him to listen carefully and be surprised. She, the great goddess of Pippin, before returning him to the world of the living, was going to give him a rare skill. Was Eric surprised? The goddess asked how happy he was if he was speechless. She asked the protagonist to tell her about the joy that bubbles in his heart when he calms down. She twirled him in her arms like a feather and asked him to call her the best goddess, to say that he loves her, that she is kind and beautiful. Something like that. Eric replied that he does not want anything. The goddess stopped and asked if MC was a little deaf and didn't hear her offer. But Eric clearly repeated that he didn't need any skills. They meant nothing to him. Peppina grabbed her head. She didn't expect that. She asked him again if he understood her correctly. She offered him any rare skill he wanted. Usually young people of his age are delighted with this. MC thought about it. The goddess continued to talk about how the protagonist is young and needs to dream big. The ancestors of the king who ruled the northern kingdom were rich people. And the heroes who defeated the mythical demon king, they all got their skills here from her. They were all famous people. It had been a long time since she saw a soul that was not charged with motivation. The goddess was surprised. Didn't the protagonist want to show his Emma his reborn form? She flew to a spreading tree. There was a small lake under the tree and said that Emma was worried about him. They looked into the lake together. Eric saw himself lying on the bed unconscious, and Emma was sitting next to him and crying. It seemed that Eric's body was in the maid's house and she was waiting for him to wake up. Peppina asked the MC if he had changed his mind and wanted to get rare skills and make Emma happy. The protagonist confidently refused. He thought that this was not enough. He promised his mother that he would do his best with any skill he got. And of course, he did not want to betray Emma. He wanted to be strong enough to protect her and himself with his telekinesis skill. Eric asked the goddess to train him. Peppina was surprised. She had never heard a lost soul speak so confidently before. The goddess thought about it and replied that she had a feeling that she could pass the time with him. She liked it. She would give him what he wanted. Eric was happy. Peppina said that training telekinesis would take time. MC agreed and said that he was ready for it. In his mind, he apologized to Emma for making her cry and asked her to wait a little. Confident in his powers, Eric stood in front of the lake. He kept his hand on his heart and promised that he would come back stronger than ever. He did not care how many years it would take if the goddess could train his telekinesis skill. The protagonist shouted loudly that the time for nostalgia was over. He would finish his training in a very short time. And then he decided to clarify how long his training would last. The goddess giggled and said that according to her calculations, 2,000 years. Eric's eyes grew big in surprise. 2,000 years? He asked that he would grow old and die while he was training. Peppina calmed MC down. Did he really think she didn't understand that? She was a goddess. The protagonist apologized. He didn't know that time here passed differently than in the real world. The goddess explained that in the real world, about 6 years would pass. And here, 2,000. She didn't see any problems with the duration of his training. Eric wondered if his soulless body, which remained in the real world, could decompose. Peppina calmed him down and said that as long as his soul was in this world, the body would be alive and would continue to grow. Moreover, if anything happened, Emma would take care of the body and it would be safe. The goddess smiled and asked the protagonist if he wasn't scared after everything he had learned. Did he still want to become stronger? Will he be able to endure 2,000 years? If she gives him another skill, she will immediately send him home. Eric has made his choice. He will become strong with his skill. After all, he swore an oath to his late mother. And no matter how long it takes, he will not be able to return to Emma as a pathetic person. Peppina said that she understood everything. The protagonist said that he will finish what he started, for Emma and for himself. He is counting on the goddess for 2,000 years. The goddess approved of his words and asked to follow her. The training began. The basis of telekinesis is the need to think about the object that needs to be moved. The size of the object directly depends on the skill of the person. MC asked for an example. The goddess pointed to a lying boulder. She moved her hand upward and the boulder rose into the air. Peppina asked if the protagonist can repeat the movement after her. She will not let him go. Eric sadly answered, "Can she start from the basics?" MC sat and listened attentively to everything the goddess said. He took notes in a notebook. Every day he trained until his strength left him. Peppina explained that in order to train telekinesis, physical strength is also necessary. She warned MC that special guests would come to the training this time. Eric tensed up. The delightful guests turned out to be friends from the demon world. The goddess held a microphone in her hands and announced that the guests would eat MC if he was lazy. He had to run away and use his wits, his skill, and strength. Forward. Eric quickly ran away from the monsters. At the finish line, the goddess gave him an apple as a prize. There was a sword fight. He dragged a huge boulder on a rope. Eric ran away from the monsters again, even faster. He trained his telekinesis skill again. Peppina praised him for his good work. Sometime later, during the telekinesis training, the protagonist shows off his new power. He lifted a huge mountain with trees and hills growing on it. The goddess was surprised that he could use the skill without chanting. He passed the test and she praised him. She said that the boy who could barely move one stone had grown into such a wonderful person. And she was happy for MC. The next training was a sword fight. Peppina asked if it seemed like the protagonist had already lost a similar battle. Suddenly, Eric remembered that there had been a similar battle. He and Rosh. It was only their battle. His brother had the fencing skill and his sister had magic. The sword flies out of the protagonist's hand. The goddess held the sword by MC's neck and told him not to worry, because she had trained him herself. Now he could win. One movement of her hand and MC returned the sword to his hand. Another movement and the sword from the goddess's hands fell to the side. Eric confidently said that now he would definitely win. Peppina smiled. MC politely asked for another fight. The goddess agreed. It was time to part. The goddess sadly asked MC if he was really leaving. Maybe he would stay for another 1,000 years? Eric refused and said that it was time for him to go. He asked what was the matter? Was the goddess lonely? Peppina answered that it was not true. At the moment of parting, the goddess said that she enjoyed the time spent with MC much more than she thought. She said goodbye and said that she could not be so honest. Peppina pushed the protagonist to move to another world. She reminded him that he had Emma. He must return home and demonstrate his strongest telekinetic abilities, approved by the goddess. MC's experience will be reflected in the real world. It will hurt a little, but he will have to endure it. Eric said that he understands everything. Now he will not lose to anyone, because Peppina guaranteed it. As a farewell, she kissed him on the cheek and pushed him into the lake. The protagonist was falling into the abyss. Emma stood sadly on the threshold of her house. Sounds were heard in the room where Eric's body lay. He really returned to the world of the living. Only 6 years had passed, so he was 16 now? Emma entered the room and was surprised by what she saw. Mr. Eric was sitting on the bed, conscious. They saw each other and were happy. Emma ran up and hugged MC. The protagonist was also happy to see her and asked her not to cry. He asked her to tell him what happened 6 years ago in the Kinesis family. Emma said that after the battle, The master ordered her to get rid of the protagonist's body, and then she was fired. Emma could not bury MC, so she brought him to her home. His cold body was still beautiful, not a trace of decomposition after so many days. She believed that one day he would wake up, and that day has come. Eric thanked her. He said that he was alive thanks to Emma and bowed. MC said that he was no longer a nobleman, so there was no need to address him so formally. Shouts to run were heard outside the window. Orcs were running along the streets of the village. People were running from them in different directions. Emma screamed that the orcs were heading towards this hill. We need to get out of here before the guards deal with them. Eric asked Emma to stay in the house. He jumped out the window. Emma asked what he was talking about. Eric was focused and raised a lot of debris into the air. One of the guards asked another, what kind of demonic reinforcements? He called the commander. Eric sent fragments of tiles at the orcs in flight, a brilliant hit in vital places. Now all at once, he jumped from stone to stone and sent even more debris into the air. MC screamed that it was enough to destroy other people's houses. He did not understand what the problem was with the orcs. Eric gathered all his strength and sent the debris towards the orcs. People looked out of their windows and asked each other, who was that guy who had just dealt with the orcs? Eric walked down the street and was happy that he had managed to use his power. The protagonist reasoned that the orcs deserved their fate because they had destroyed so many houses. Emma ran up and called MC. The protagonist reminded her that he had asked her to stay home. She had come running because he had flown away barefoot. Emma was worried that he had just woken up and needed time to recover. The militia commander approached MC and praised him for dealing with the orcs. The commander did not know how to thank the hero for his help. The protagonist said that he had not done anything special, he had just helped. The commander clarified that MC had saved the entire village. Eric told the commander that he would clean up the rubble and asked the neighborhood watch to take care of the wounded. The commander asked if that was a very generous offer. The protagonist said that he had been sleeping a lot, so he had a lot of energy. Emma asked MC if he was going to do it all alone. It was hard. Eric said that he wanted to restore order in the village she was born in as soon as possible. With his telekinetic powers, it would be much faster for him to do it alone than with a large group of people. Eric collected the destroyed houses brick by brick. The cart with the cobblestones flew through the air like a feather. Most of the work was already finished. Eric stood in the square and looked at the pile of orcs. He didn't know what to do with them. A small boy ran up and asked MC if he had protected the village. The boys suggested eating the orcs because they were delicious meat. Eric knew about this fact, but he had never tried it before. The protagonist suggested that they all eat together. He said that he would take care of the processing and cutting of the meat. He suggested that the children call everyone else. There was a large vat of stew in the square. The whole village gathered. Eric took 2 bowls and headed towards the bench where Emma was sitting. She thanked him and called him sir. The protagonist was indignant that she called him sir again. He said that it was ruining the holiday. Emma apologized and said that it was hard for her to get used to it. MC ate 1 spoon of stew. It turned out that orc meat was very tasty, although it looked just awful. Emma said that MC had settled in the village well. Everyone in the village accepted him. People were sure that a very strong person had arrived. Emma was happy. Eric said that it was a great honor for him and 2,000 years of work were worth it. Emma asked if he would like to stay and live with her in the same house in this village. Eric thought about it. It was too straightforward for him, and he asked for time to think. In the 6 years she had been watching him, something inexplicable must have happened. She was sure he had become much stronger. She would not survive if something like that happened again, and she did not want to experience it again. The protagonist said that he understood everything and was very sorry, but he had other things to do. Emma asked what kind of things he meant. She was afraid that he wanted to return to the Kinesis dukedom, but he had already been erased from the bloodline. MC said that he did not want to return to the nobility. He just wanted to get even with them for everything. Emma was surprised by his desire to get even. Eric asked not to look at him like that. He would not be able to resist. In fact, he died and was reborn. He wanted to do something about this lump in his chest to move on. They were 16 years old. Why not go to the academy? Emma was surprised by the offer to study at the academy. The Gallatin Royal Academy, where the Kinesis family has been going for several generations. Roche and Sarissa would be there. Eric knew that he would be able to fight fairly with his family without any interference. He would be able to make friends, study, and get to know the world in general. Emma was a commoner, so she did not deserve to study at the academy. MC asked her not to worry about it because the academy only lets commoners in if they can pay for it. He would take care of that himself. The protagonist had 2 platinum coins, each worth 1,000 gold coins. Eric decided to use the parting gift from the goddess. She was sure that her gift would be useful to him. She asked him to use it when the time came. Thus, all the formalities related to enrollment in the academy were completed. Emma's parents thanked MC for everything. Many villagers came to say goodbye to them. After a while, Gallatin Academy appeared ahead. It was a large and beautiful castle. Eric asked Emma if she was worried. She agreed and said that she had never been to such a beautiful place before. He showed the place where the entrance ceremony was being held. Someone came up from behind and asked if they were new students. The protagonist agreed. The unknown young man said that he thought so. He clarified that he and the unknown girl were also heading to the entrance ceremony. It would be a little suspicious if he spoke to the MC out of the blue, right? The young man introduced himself as the son of a merchant from the capital. His name was Niket. Next to him stood a girl who was his sister named Mary. Mary said that she was pleased to meet him and clarified that their parents ran the Saragal Trading Company. Eric and Emma greeted each other and introduced themselves. The guys decided to go to the entrance ceremony together. Niket was curious about their specialization. Eric did not understand the question, was surprised. What? Then the new acquaintance clarified what he meant. In what area are they the best? He explained that learning combat skills to become a knight or adventurer is a combat specialization. The Commerce Department learns how to use skills to master a business profession or something else, otherwise a craft specialization. Eric understood everything and said that Emma would be in the Commerce Department and he would study martial arts. Niket said that it meant that he would study with his sister. And he asked again, what was their combat skill? Eric answered that his skill was telekinesis. Niket was surprised. What, is this a joke? Mary pulled her brother up and said that it was impolite to ask about someone else's skills. Niket apologized. The protagonist thought that telekinesis was an inappropriate skill for the public. He suggested that everyone go to the ceremony. When they approached the academy, they heard that everything was already starting. The new student representative was already giving a speech. There were two representatives, a boy, his name was Elwood, and a girl, her name was Yato. Eric asked, why two representatives? Emma asked Eric what it meant. Niket said that they might not know who Yato was. Well, they must have heard about Elwood, right? The programmer replied that, frankly speaking, no. Niket was surprised. Seriously? He told her that Elwood was the prince of the Garvey kingdom. He was a genius born with 3 abilities. 3 skills. That's cool. Amazing. The protagonist thought that maybe Roche and Sarissa would show up. After all, this was a big event. But he knew one thing for sure. They were among those admitted. They would meet again. After the ceremony, Niket suggested having dinner in the central square. He said that Mary should have already taken her seats. As they approached, they heard Mary's voice. She was demanding that someone stop. She was telling someone that she had taken her seat first, and she was asking why she should give it up to those who came later. Mary was very indignant at what was happening. A huge young man stood in front of her. He claimed that he was with the eldest son of Baron Paisley. His name is Marcos Paisley, and his wishes should be her law. She screamed that she didn't know such a thing. If he was a nobleman, he should be ashamed of such behavior. Paisley addressed the big guy by name. His name was Gumbo, and asked him to shut up Mary. Gumbo rushed to fulfill the wish of the Baron's son. He approached her and pushed her with his hand. Mary fell. Niket jumped up and asked if everything was okay with her. At that moment, Gumbo froze in an awkward position and could not move. Marcos asked him what he was doing. Gumbo swore and replied that he could not move. He did not understand. What kind of skill is this? Eric calmly replied that it was telekinesis. Marcos asked again in surprise. Telekinesis? He said that it was the most garbage skill, and he hoped that Eric was not accepted, but the protagonist replied that he was accepted. Both offenders stood in an awkward pose with their arms outstretched and could not move. They asked him to stop joking. Macro asked to immediately let Gumbo go. Eric, using telekinesis, made Gumbo hit Macro in the nose with his elbow. The blow was very strong. Gumbo shouted in fear at Mr. Macro. He asked for forgiveness because he could not feel his hand. Macro held his nose with his hands. Blood was flowing. He was furious and scared at the same time. Eric let them go and said that they were done. The offenders looked angrily at the protagonist and, supporting each other, left. Niket asked Eric what just happened. The protagonist answered that nothing special. He laughed and offered to eat. Some time passed. The Department of Combat Skills, first year, Class F. The students gathered in the classroom. In front of them stood an elderly man in glasses. He said that his name was Shakariki. He was the teacher who supervised this class. Shakariki asked the students if they wanted to introduce themselves. Only those who wanted to say their name and skill could introduce themselves. There were no volunteers. The students thought that they were not very verbose. Then he suggested that they introduce themselves in any way they saw fit. One girl stood up and said that she was from Yamato. Her name was Yato Shikiba. After her, A guy stood up and said that his name was Gambo. He was from the Horn Kingdom. He would become a knight in the future. Then the protagonist introduced himself, saying that he was Eric. He was from the Dao Kingdom. His skill was telekinesis. Gambo asked him again, "Really?" And he put his hands behind his head, satisfied. The protagonist confirmed that he had exactly that skill. Eric said that people thought it was a useless skill, but he didn't think so. Gambo told him that he didn't think a person who could only move objects could compare to real fighting skills, no matter how hard he tried. Eric tried to argue with him. The teacher listened to their verbal sparring, leaned both hands on the table, and suggested that in that case, maybe they wanted to have a demonstration fight. Gambo was surprised by this turn of events. The teacher continued to say that he would help organize everything. Soon, there would be a fighting tournament where new students would be judged on their merits. He adjusted his glasses with his hand and said that he also realized that there was a lot of personal animosity between the boys. They went to the martial arts arena on campus. Eric couldn't believe that on his first day he would have to participate in a mock fight. The teacher asked them if they were ready. The protagonist replied that he was ready. Gambo also replied that he was ready to begin. The teacher raised his hand up and commanded, "To fight." They stood opposite each other. Gambo made a scary face. He clenched his fists and prepared to fight. Eric relaxed his hands and prepared to use his skill. Gambo called out his skill. Eric called out his. The other students stood to the side with their mouths open. Gambo's skill was steel body. He shouted that his skills were at level 19. He could turn his entire body into steel. He had never been injured. Gambo attacked first and cursed. He didn't expect Eric to dodge so deftly. Eric used his skills to support himself and dodge. He extended his hand with 2 fingers and asked, "How about this move?" Using telekinesis, he lifted Gambo up in the air and slammed him hard onto the floor. Gambo stayed on his feet and said that nothing was working. He didn't even feel it. Then Eric, manipulating both hands, lifted Gambo up in the air again and began to spin him. Gambo asked if the protagonist was going to keep turning him over. He insisted that no matter what Eric did, it had no effect on him. Then the protagonist began to spin him even harder at a tremendous speed. He decided that Gambo was still a man, even though he was made entirely of steel. If he spun him fast, he could win. Eric spun him for some more time. Gambo fell silent and lost consciousness. Eric exhaled and threw him hard on the floor. The teacher came to check and said, "No wonder he fainted. Get him to the infirmary quickly." The teacher decided to announce that there was a winner in this battle, but he fell silent and heard Gambo moving. The protagonist heard it too and turned around. Gambo stood up like a zombie. His head was thrown back and his eyes were empty. He wheezed that he would become a knight. At that moment, his whole life flashed through his mind. He was born in the Horn Kingdom, on a land that was poor. The only work was to extract resources to sell to other countries. In a country where you could only become a miner or a vagabond, his only treasure was his father. A commoner who became a knight. Gambo never knew how his father became one, but it was the only thing he could be proud of. His father was a great man. A knight of the kingdom. A friend in his childhood asked him if he knew who a knight was. Gambo answered that it was a servant of the king, right? As a child, Gambo constantly fought to protect his father's name. And when he turned 10, he was very happy when he received his skill. Now he could become a knight like his father. But in his country, this was impossible. The poor people of the Horn Kingdom did not need knights. They only needed workers. So, Gambo bowed to his father and desperately begged him to send him to Gallatin. His father agreed and said that he would send him to study at the Gallatin Academy. Although Gambo did not understand this before, everything became clear to him. His father had more wounds than any miner. He only had one arm, and he lost an eye. His father had done too much for the kingdom. Ever since he entered the academy, Gambo had done everything he could to live up to his father's expectations. He acted like a confidant to anyone with a title, even if they were scum. He committed violence, even if he didn't like it. All of this, absolutely everything. Gambo wheezed again, in order to become a knight. The protagonist was surprised. He saw that Gambo was unconscious, but he activated his skill using only energy. And after such a move as Eric did, it must be hard to even move. He didn't understand what was driving Gambo now. It was not his consciousness, but his will. The various emotions and desires in his heart and also his own roots. He was driven only by his strong will to become a knight. Eric's teacher approached and asked what he would do. The protagonist approached Gambo and thought that he did not like his cruelty at all. It was the same with him. How many thousands of times had he reached the limit of his capabilities during long and grueling training with the goddess, but he still kept moving. He had a strong desire to take revenge on his brother and sister. Eric began manipulating his hands again. Gambo still wanted to fight. Then what could he do? It was time. Settlement. Eric turned all his power on Gambo. One of the girls was interested in what had happened and the fact that Eric had telekinesis. The other two were talking about having to call a restoration master, and she thought about the 6 demon kings and how it had been a long time since she had to kill one of them. After some time, Shakaraki-sensei was sitting in the teacher's room, and a young teacher approached him and said that he heard that there was an exhibition fight among the students in his class. He asked how it went. Shakaraki-sensei thought for a moment and then replied that this was the most unusual result in his life as a teacher. The first student was a commoner, but skilled enough to destroy an entire arena. The other one, even after losing consciousness, would still activate his skill in response to an opponent's attack. And both of them were first-year students. It seemed like there would be no boredom with this year's students. It was raining outside. All the students came to the cafeteria. There was a whole crowd there. Eric invited his friends to sit at an empty table. Only Gambo was sitting there. The protagonist greeted him. Gambo rudely told him to shut up and not to sit at the table next to him. Eric said that it was lunchtime, and asked him not to be a jerk and not to ignore the other guys. Gambo jumped up and loudly asked who gave them permission to sit here. He said that this place was reserved for Mr. Marcos. Gambo noticed that the Baron's son was walking with a tray of food. He waved his hand at him and called him over, but Marcos didn't even look in his direction. He passed by with some new bully friend. The new friend asked Marcos about Gumbo. Who is he? Marcos arrogantly replied that he didn't know such an incompetent student, and on top of that, he treated everyone arrogantly. How could he stay in the academy if he lost to some telekinetic loser? Marcos laughed and said loudly that if he were Gumbo, he would voluntarily leave the academy. He called his friend Rox and they went to another table together. Gumbo was furious. Eric tried to calm him down, but Gumbo grabbed him by the collar and said, "Just try it." Then he asked the protagonist. He wasn't going to give him any comforting advice, was he? The protagonist wanted to say something, but Gumbo told him to shut up, and one of the guys told Gumbo that he lost. Gumbo asked again, who said that? And then from the other side, another student told Eric to beat up Gumbo again, and then another one said that Gumbo should fly again. And the fourth one said that Gumbo was weak and could only yell at the others. All the students were against him. Someone shouted that such a loser could not become a knight. They asked Eric to punish him. They were already shouting from different sides, beat him. Emma asked them to calm down. Mary pulled her brother up. Niket also asked to calm down. But now all the students in the cafeteria were shouting, "Beat him! Beat him! Beat him!" Using telekinesis, Eric made all the students cover each other's mouths with their hands. He asked everyone to be silent and said that he thought they were being unfair in this matter. Only he could talk to Gumbo. The protagonist turned over his shoulder and added that he wanted everyone to be quiet. He hoped that he made it clear to everyone. Complete silence reigned. Eric exhaled and said that it was calmer that way. At that moment, Gumbo let go of Eric and headed for the exit. The protagonist asked Gumbo if he had anything to say, but he cursed and replied that he had nothing to say. The four of them remained sitting at the table. MC got up from the table, apologized, and said that he had some business. He was leaving. Niket was surprised and asked what business there could be. He hadn't eaten yet? The protagonist didn't answer and headed for the exit. Niket called his name again, but MC didn't even turn around. Then Emma called him, but he didn't respond and left. Emma knew that Eric wasn't going to return to the nobility. He just needed to get even. She had been worried about him ever since he told her those words. He entered the academy like that. So the kindest person she had ever known had changed. But she saw how the protagonist was worried about Gumbo. Emma began to feel a little calmer. It was raining outside. Gumbo sat down on the ground and leaned his back against the wall. He remembered Marcos's words, that he should leave voluntarily. Gumbo was thinking and talking to himself. He had come all this way to become a knight, so it was a pathetic story. At that moment, Eric came up. He had heard everything Gumbo was saying. Gumbo asked the protagonist if he thought so too. Eric addressed him by name and suggested that they go back because it was raining outside. But he asked the protagonist whose fault it was that he was like this. Maybe MC could tell him? Eric replied that it was his own fault for laughing at the protagonist's skill. Moreover, Eric has already proven the power of telekinesis. Gumbo replied, "Look, the protagonist said it all himself. What else can we talk about?" That's why. Eric objected to him and said that he knows how much he wants to become a knight, and knows how hard he works for it. And Gumbo proved it in yesterday's fight. Gumbo thought about it. MC asked, "Does he understand this?" Gumbo answered, "Even if so, then what is all this for? What does the protagonist want from him?" Eric thought about it and extended his hand. The rain did not stop. Gumbo looked at his hand in bewilderment. Eric was offering him to make peace. Gumbo grinned and was even more surprised. The protagonist said that they did not quarrel but still offered to make peace. Gumbo asked, "Is Eric in his right mind? Make peace?" They are not even friends. MC asked, why, and answered that they had a fair fight. That makes them friends. Eric stood there with his hand outstretched in an offer of friendship. Gambo looked at him with distrust. Then Eric asked if he thought that Marcos, who didn't care about him, was more suitable as a friend. Gambo thought about it. He understood that the arrogant son of the Baron had betrayed him. Gambo happily agreed to be friends. He took the protagonist's hand, and Eric helped him stand up. Gambo apologized for laughing at telekinesis. Then he said that even though they were friends, next time he would not give the protagonist a break. Eric laughed and said that he would also give it his all. Gambo offered to go. Eric agreed. When they came to the academy, they saw an announcement. It said about a skill test. It was suggested to use the skill and push yourself to the limit. There would be 3 tests: individual battles, teams of 3, and battles for the flag. The friends read the announcement. The protagonist said that the content was too scary for such a cute design. Gambo replied that it was a big event that was held 3 times a year, so the committee put a lot of effort into it. This time it was for the freshmen. Eric told him that an individual competition was no problem, but a team competition of 3 people was difficult. Gambo told him that they needed to find 1 more person before the application deadline. The protagonist asked if Gambo considered him a teammate now. While they were standing and talking, a couple of guys passed by. Eric overheard their conversation. The girl called the guy a brother and asked how he liked this academy. The guy replied that from his first impression, there were mostly slackers here. Eric thought he recognized those voices. He looked after them and realized who it was. He finally found them. Suddenly, everything shook and glass began to break. Cracks began to crawl along the walls and ceilings. The protagonist realized that they were brother and sister. Waves were created around his body. This was his skill working. Stones flew from the ceiling. The floor began to collapse. Gambo screamed, "What's going on?" He asked Eric what was wrong with him. Was his skill getting out of control? But MC didn't answer. The walls and ceiling continued to collapse. Gambo realized that if he didn't do anything, the academy would turn into ruins. He demanded that Eric stop. But there was no answer from his friend. Gambo decided that the protagonist was unconscious. He turned his hand into steel to help Eric. He swung his hand at the protagonist and said that he would bring him to his senses. But the hand clenched into a pathetic hook. Gambo looked at this and cursed. The hand that turned into steel doesn't work? He realized that he won't be able to get closer to the protagonist. Then, he needs to turn his whole body into steel. The whole body can withstand the pressure of telekinesis like a single block of steel. Exactly. Gambo turned into iron and rushed at Eric. He screamed for him to come to his senses. He hit him in the forehead with his forehead so that he flew to the side. Eric and Gambo were lying on the floor. The collapses stopped immediately. Gambo called MC, but he was unconscious. Gambo said that now he also had to save Eric, who had lost consciousness. A week had passed since then. The training ground is a facility on the school grounds. There, students train together to improve their skills. Gambo and Eric were sitting together, and the protagonist asked guiltily if he was sure he was okay. Gambo replied that it was okay. The academy employs mages with top-level medical skills. They got him back on his feet by the end of the day. Eric apologized for what happened. He explained that when he woke up in his dorm room, Emma and Nikit told him what happened. He and Gambo were taken to the infirmary for treatment. Skills going out of control seemed to be common for students their age. The teachers did not reprimand them. The broken corridor became normal again. The protagonist never thought that he would get out of control when he saw them. He apologized to Gambo once again. Gambo responded to make the protagonist relax. Friends should help each other. He didn't care that this happened. So there was no need to worry. The whole point of today was to find a teammate to participate in the martial arts tournament. Eric had completely forgotten about it. Nikit had just told him during lunch that the martial arts department was targeting a martial arts tournament. It was held 3 times a year for new students. For the commerce department, there was an arts and crafts competition and a bake sale, where products made with skills were displayed and sold. Aristocrats and famous merchants often attended these events. These were the 2 biggest events at the academy. The tournament would affect his grades, and there was a limited application period. So if he wanted to participate in the martial arts team competition, he needed to find a 3rd person as soon as possible. Eric had then told him that he understood everything. So they began searching. The protagonist approached Yato Shikiba with an offer. She apologized and said that she was not interested in team competitions. Mary also said that she didn't want to because she had too much work. The 2 that the protagonist had his eye on refused, so they had to find someone else. Someone called out to them from above and told them to run, because the balls were about to fall. 2 huge balls were falling on Eric and Gambo from above. The friends did not think long. The protagonist stopped one ball with telekinesis and put it on the ground. The second ball was stopped by Gambo. He made his hand iron and hit the ball. The ball broke and fell to the side. It is not clear how the balls flew at them at all. One of the girls was training with the balls. Someone told her that if she wanted to train alone, she should do it somewhere else. Gambo asked if she was aiming. It seemed they could not follow their actions. The protagonist replied that she was not alone there. There were really two of them training. The girl with the balls had an opponent. They tried to hit each other with the ball. They threw it and dodged it. They caught the opponent's ball and threw it back. But one girl couldn't handle it and went into hand-to-hand combat. The other was very surprised by this turn of events. The first one kicked the second one with a jumping kick. She fell to the floor and the fight was over. The one who kicked said that it was a good fight, but the second one lacked speed. The protagonist commented with surprise that the fight ended quickly. Gambo replied that it was obvious that she was not wasting time. And suddenly, a voice was heard behind them, which said that she was embarrassed when they talked like that. They tensed up in surprise and turned towards the voice. It was the same girl who was agile and fast. She asked them. They were first years, right? She said that she was in Class B. Her name is Fine. Nice to meet you. She hugged them both by the neck and said that she saw them stop the iron balls. It was amazing. She touched Gambo's muscles, admired them and asked, "Does he specialize in physical strengthening? I'm sure he had to train a lot, right?" And then she turned to Eric and asked what his skill was. Magic? She said he didn't look like a guy with a weapon, and asked him to tell her. The guys stood up and the protagonist said that they need to go to another training ground. Gambo said that he thought so too. Fine asked, do they think they can escape from her? And suddenly she appeared in front of them again. She said that acceleration is her skill, and no one can compare with her in speed. She showed them her skill and asked them to show her their skills too. Eric said that he has telekinesis. She was very surprised and did not believe him. She thought about it and asked if he was hiding some other skill. The protagonist answered that he did not and said that he only had telekinetic abilities. She was surprised again and did not believe it. Gumbo stood up for his friend and said that he was not lying. He personally guarantees it. Fine chuckled and said that if he was bragging about his muscles, she could believe him. Gumbo asked when he bragged. She ignored his question and asked if they wanted to train with her. They did not look weak, especially the one with the muscles. The friends thought about it and, thanking her for the offer, refused. Fine did not lag behind them and offered to train at least today. Eric insistently refused and said that they were not training. She asked if they were looking for a teammate for the martial arts tournament. Would they like her to join them? Fine said that of all the students training there now, she was the strongest and fastest, and she would get a lot out of them if they could train together. Gambo thought that this was a bit too sudden and asked the protagonist what to do. Eric told him that he had seen her fight well. She had the right balance of speed and strength. Fine happily said that then everything was decided. She asked what their names were. The friends introduced themselves. Fine turned to Eric and Gambo and said that their meeting was destined. Nice to meet you. The boys replied that they were too. The three of them went to sign up for the tournament. Eric said, even though this place is for new students to apply, there is a very long line. Gambo agreed and said that the first season martial arts tournament was optional. In other words, they were all first-year students of the martial arts department who were confident in their abilities. Gambo shouted loudly that his team would be the winner of the tournament. The students standing in line glared at him. Eric covered his face with his hand and asked why this pointless teasing started. He asked Fine to say something. But Fine had already seen some big guy and ran to admire his muscles. She asked him if he would participate in the individual competition. Eric had no choice but to go and apply alone. Eric thought that if the first-year students who were confident in their abilities were applying, then his brother and sister would also participate in the tournament. He was looking at the application form for the first semester martial arts tournament. The protagonist thought that the tournament could be the place for his revenge. And he was going to involve these innocent people in his plan. He was so lost in thought that he accidentally bumped into the back of the guy standing in front of him. Eric immediately apologized. The guy turned around and said it was okay. MC thought about it and recognized him. It was Elwood. He was giving a speech at the entrance ceremony. The guy asked what Eric was thinking about. Something interesting? The protagonist answered no. Elwood said that he was just not used to standing in line. He also needed to apply for the tournament. When he was at home, everyone was doing his favors for him. Eric understood him and said that he saw that he had 2 folders. Did that mean he was planning to participate in the individual competition as well? Elwood said that Eric was right, but wasn't he the same? He asked the protagonist if he had assembled a worthy team. MC replied that they didn't have teamwork and cohesion yet, but he thought that all three of them had the same goal. Elwood became interested and asked what the goal was. The protagonist proudly answered, to win. The teacher, accepting the documents, called the next one. Elwood said that it was his turn. He thought, seeing the protagonist's expression, that Eric's team was really great. But his team was much better because he had the best swordsman and mage in the academy on his team. Elwood waved goodbye and added that he was excited and couldn't wait to compete with Eric. Eric thought for a moment and watched him go. After submitting his application, he went to look for Mary. She was talking with other girls, and he didn't understand how much longer he would have to wait for his turn to talk to her. He couldn't stand it any longer and called her. She was surprised. The girls said they would go, and Mary replied that they could see each other later. The protagonist asked if she was also applying to participate in the tournament. Mary confirmed and said that in her case, only for the individual one. She declined the invitation to join the team, but was looking forward to the tournament. She uses a sword in duels, so she wanted to see what she could do. Yato passed by and overheard their conversation. She turned to Mary and told her not to even think about it. Mary smirked and asked why. Eric was surprised and asked Mary if Shakiba Yato was in the same class as her. Yato asked Mary if she said they used a sword, right? Mary confirmed it and asked what was wrong with that. Yato approached her, sniffed her, and said that Mary had no smell. Mary objected and asked what Yato was doing. Yato said that she did not smell blood. Mary had never had a real fight. She had never killed anyone, right? If Mary were to swing a sword for fun, she would be killed quickly. Yato demanded that Mary cancel her application right away. Mary became very angry. She was about to put her hand on the sword handle and asked if she was swinging a sword for fun. Did Yato want to check? I asked her not to misunderstand her. She did not intend to incite her. And since Mary had never even touched the hilt, she should understand the difference in skill. Mary became even more angry at these words. She was about to draw her sword. Eric stood between the girls and told Mary not to do that, not to try to draw her sword in public. Mary calmed down and said that she understood everything. Whether it was fun or not, she would find out for herself at the martial arts tournament. Yato told her that she would look forward to competing with her. After these words, she turned around and left. Eric exhaled and said, "Why is it always him?" Mary was standing behind him and was very upset about what had happened. She clenched her fists and asked, "Does this mean that she is not even worth dealing with?" Eric watched Yato leave and told Mary not to worry about this cheap provocation. But Mary just turned around and walked in the opposite direction. Eric was surprised by this. He thought that he was not the only one with a goal in this tournament. At this time, Elwood was heading outside to the team waiting for him. He told them that he had already applied for the team match and apologized for keeping them waiting. Team Elwood was Rosh and Sarissa. Sarissa said that Prince Elwood did not need to go. She could have asked her friend. Elwood objected to her that it was not necessary to do that. He was an ordinary student at the academy. He said that it was worth it. He met great people. Rosh was surprised and asked if there was a person who met the standards of a genius prince with 3 skills. The prince confirmed. Rosh was surprised. Who could it be? Elwood said that his team was Rosh, the genius swordsman of the Dio kingdom, and his younger sister, the genius mage Miss Sarissa. Together with him, they will be invincible. On the training grounds, training fights were taking place. 2 guys were training on one of the fields. One stopped and looked at the next field. The first one told him that he shouldn't skip practice. He knows that the tournament is coming up, right? The one watching replied that there were some really good students. He pointed to the next field. The second one also looked and asked, "Who is that over there?" Fine and Gambo were training on the next field. She jumped on top of him and wanted to hit him, but he dodged and parried the blow. He asked her if thick-soled boots are also weapons. She has some experience in martial arts. She confirmed his words. Fine started another attack by jumping on top. Gambo told her that it is difficult to fight someone like him. This is where good martial arts manners are demonstrated. If someone behaves unsportsmanlike, then you should expect a response. Fine jumped on him again from above and he parried her kick. Eric shouted, "Stop!" He was sitting next to the field and watching their training. The protagonist asked, "Have they forgotten that they are at training?" The other students are also looking at them. Gambo agreed with him and said that it would be a bad idea to show all his cards. He asked the protagonist, "What about the combat uniform?" The protagonist agreed that now that he thought about it, everyone was wearing weird clothes. Gavu was surprised and asked again, didn't he know? They wear clothes that match their skills. In Gambo's case, his whole body is protected, so he wears light combat gear. Fine also said that she had gloves and shoes custom made. During training, she uses different shoes so that the main ones don't wear out prematurely. Eric thought about it and said that he doesn't have anything. Gambo told him that he should wear the same thing. The protagonist said that he will wear clothes that are easy to move in. Gombo told him that if they win, and one of them is on the podium in sportswear, it won't be cool. Eric said that everything will be fine. The protagonist's name was called. It was Emma. She said that she finally found him. Mary told her that he would be here. Eric asked why she was in a hurry. She was very excited and said she had a favor to ask of him. Some time had passed since then. Someone's voice into the microphone. He counted 1, 1. Then he apologized for making everyone wait. The opening ceremony of the martial arts tournament among freshmen is about to begin. Now we will listen to the speech of the director of the academy, Mr. and Poseidon. A lot of people gathered for the ceremony. An old man with gray hair and a thick beard approached the microphone. He said that he did not like long speeches, so he would be brief. It was okay if they got hurt. Dr. Nightingale would treat them, so he asked everyone to give it their all. He finished his speech. Then the next person the old man mentioned was announced. Our nurse is one of the 5 stars. She will be in charge of medical matters at the tournament. Now, it is Miss Nightingale's turn to speak. One guy asked in a whisper, 5 stars? Another answered him in the affirmative. The third said that at the moment she has confirmed the highest level of skill, S rank. He knew about her abilities, but 5 stars? She slowly approached the microphone and said, as the director said, any injury or death will be eliminated within 1 day. Now everyone understood why she has 5 stars. The doctor asked that all the new students who will be participating fight to the limit of their strength. They need to learn from death, pain, and despair. She finished her speech and walked away from the microphone. The principal thanked her for her hard work. She asked him if she really had to say all that. He told her, of course, her speech was to inspire the new students. Then it was announced that the students should prepare in the waiting room. The ceremony continued, and all the participants left. Gumbo was upset. Why did they have to watch the opening ceremony from the waiting room? Fine answered that they had no choice. Only outstanding teams of noble origin can hold the opening ceremony on the main stage. Team battles are popular. There are more than 100 of them in total, so it is logical. Gumbo thought and asked where Eric had disappeared to. Fine answered. They said they will be there soon. She hopes that they will make it in time. Eric came in and apologized for keeping them waiting. Emma came with him. She also apologized and said that it took some time to finish the costume. Gumbo replied that they were not late and he was already happy with it. Fine appreciated his outfit and said that he looked cool. When Emma came running and said that she had a favor to ask Eric, she meant this. Eric then asked her what was wrong. She was out of breath and looked worried. Mary told her that the protagonist would be participating in the tournament. And then Emma realized that Eric did not have a battle uniform, so she came to their training. Eric was surprised by this. Emma said that if he did not mind, then she could use her sewing skill. She wanted him to let her sew a suit for him. He was very happy, agreed, and asked to make him a battle suit. He asked if there was anything he could do to help. He would do anything. Fine asked if she needed help taking measurements, and she said that he did not have to undress right there. The suit was really cool. Emma asked if it was too tight anywhere. Eric replied that it was amazing. It is made sturdily, but at the same time lightweight, and does not restrict movement. Emma said that Fine helped her with the choice of material. Fine confirmed her words and said that she ordered the material from Baldo, the country of warriors, where she comes from. The material is made of a special fiber that is used in judo uniforms, so the suit is light but durable. She also took leftovers from her parents' dojo. This was very useful. Emma asked the protagonist to spread his arms back and check how the suit fits. He did so. It was very comfortable for him. Suddenly, 2 swords jumped out of his sleeves. He asked in surprise, "What are these hidden swords?" Emma said that they are a gift from Gumbo. He confirmed her words and said that when it comes to steel, the Horn Kingdom can be sure that it can surpass any other country. The blades are forged from the highest quality iron. No enemy will be able to even scratch them. Eric was grateful to Gumbo for this. Eric told Emma that hidden swords and designs were not very similar to her style, and that face mask too. Emma said she was looking at the library for a design for a combat suit that was easy to wear. A beautiful woman with black hair and a sword in her hand suggested that she draw inspiration from the assassin profession. In fact, she did not want him to get hurt, so she decided to do everything possible so that she would not regret anything later. So that no one could hear, she whispered to him that he should hide his face, because the inhabitants of the Deo Kingdom might recognize him. The protagonist thought about it. He realized that she was thinking everything in advance, and in the matter of clothes too. Voices were heard behind them that they also helped. It was Niket and Mary. Niket saw the suit and said that it looked like it was ready. Emma said that Niket was in charge of the expenses for materials. He said that in the end he was the heir to the company. The debit and credit converged, as they say. But Emma worked harder than anyone. The protagonist was surprised and happy at the same time. Emma said that she was just doing what she wanted. Eric began to thank her happily. Tears came to her eyes. She covered her face with her hand and said that she was just paying him back for everything. Eric asked why she was crying, and the guys began to judge him. Gumbo said that Eric was wrong. Fine asked how it was possible to make a girl cry. Mary said that he was the worst. Eric was surprised and asked what was his fault. Emma answered that the protagonist had nothing to do with it. She was happy, so she cried. She realized how many wonderful friends she had. She was glad that she got into this academy. Eric said that he was also very happy. Niket said that the rules of the battles for the flags would soon be explained to those participating in the team competitions. At the ceremony, it was announced that before the rules were explained, each team must take an oath. Elwood Gallatin, Rosh Kinesis, Sarisa Kinesis must do it first. Forward. Elwood came up to the microphone and said that first of all they would swear to fight a fair and honest battle. Roch and Sarissa said they swear. Eric looked at them and thought, fair and honest? You would never believe the words of those two. Gumbo said that the protagonist did not seem like himself. Fine asked why Eric was nervous. She put her hand on his shoulder and calmed him down, saying that the team was ready. He had a battle suit. All that was left was to win. Eric thought that all three of them had the same goal, to win. The only people he could trust were his friends. Gumbo said that they had finally started explaining the rules. The microphone said that now the speaker would explain the rules of the battle for the flags. Gumbo asked who it was. The protagonist replied that it was Shakariki-sensei, the teacher. Shakariki said that the rules were simple. Each member of the team would get one of these things. All they had to do was fight for this thing. He showed that he had a ring on his hand. Shakariki said that the time limit was 7 hours. Each team must collect 3 bracelets. The team that successfully collected the required number will have the right to participate in the main tournament, which will be held here. The winning teams will go to the venue. The team deprived of bracelets is sent to the waiting room or the infirmary. The bracelet can only be taken away if the enemy is in a state of loss of fighting spirit or unconsciousness. Of course, it is allowed to take bracelets from the dead. When the appointed time comes, they will move to the battle site. That's all. After voicing the rules, they went to train in the waiting room. Niket came with Emma and Mary and said that he saw how hard they are preparing. Emma wished good luck to all three. Niket said that they will definitely support them, including Mary, of course. Mary was indignant and asked not to speak for her. Fine said that Mary is their powerful ally. The protagonist confirmed her words. Gumbo thought and came up to Mary. Eric called him. Mary was very surprised by what happened. Gumbo bowed his head and asked for forgiveness. Niket asked in surprise what he was doing. Mary asked Gumbo if he was apologizing for that incident. Gumbo confirmed and said what he did when he met her was terrible. He did not expect her to forgive him. He asked her to let him apologize. Otherwise, he doesn't deserve her support. Eric didn't expect such sincerity from him. Mary thought about it and asked him to raise his head. She said that if he was Eric's friend, then he was her friend too. It was natural to support friends. Gumbo thanked her for that. Fine was surprised by what was happening and asked Eric what just happened. She didn't believe that Gumbo had bowed his head. Eric thought about what had happened. He didn't know if he could remain silent in such a situation. His friends who were fighting him didn't know about his goal. Should he tell them the truth? He had just decided to tell them everything when he found himself in an unknown place. He was very surprised. Where was he? And he saw a bracelet on his hand. Gumbo called out to him. He was with Fine. The protagonist asked if they were nearby. Had they really been transported to the location? Fine said that it had finally all begun. The first round. The location of the first round of the martial arts tournament, the battle for the flags. Forest-type dungeon, Fyro Forest, great sea of trees. Fine asked what they should do now. Gumbo asked to think, then asked, should we just find the enemy team and finish them off? Eric answered that they needed some kind of plan, and he thought, should he tell them now? Would they believe him? Should he bother them with this? If this was a team fight, he decided he should tell them anyway. Fine screamed. She saw bullets flying at Eric. She called out her skill acceleration and rushed towards the protagonist, deflecting his attack. Her arm was grazed and blood started flowing. Eric cursed. How did he not notice this attack? He asked Fine if she was okay. She screamed that everything was fine and asked him to use telekinesis. They were attacked again. Gumbo covered them with his back and called out his skill steel body. The bullets bounced off him to the side. He noticed that they were suddenly targeting the protagonist. Fine said that it looks like someone is using the long-range fire skill. They need to find it first. The protagonist agreed with her. Eric wondered what he was doing. Fine was injured because of him. At this time, 2 people were sitting on a tree somewhere far away. One asked what the rating was. The second asked to wait a bit. She was almost done. She said that she saw. This giant skill is Steel Body level 19. No skill development. She will deal with the remaining 2 while the scout is distracted. Now let's see what level of telekinesis they are rumored to have. The student said they were going to win. In the past, skills only improved the physical body. Over time, as humans evolved, they changed, and now there are thousands of different types. Skills are divided into 3 categories: rank, classification, and level. The director and the doctor, along with the teachers, watched all the fights. There are ranks from G to S. The 5 with the strongest skills, known as 5 stars, are classified as S rank. The classification is divided into 4 categories. Magic tax is the process of converting one's own magical power into one of the attributes and releasing it. Strengthening the weapon that one wields and fights with is a weapon skill. Specializing in changing the nature of the physical body and strengthening physical abilities is physical enhancement. At this time, there was another attack. Gambo said that it did not work on him. Fine asked not to get carried away, since the next one was already approaching. He replied that the trajectory was too simple to dodge. She accelerated and rushed towards Gambo to save him from the attacks and push him aside. At this moment, she realized that the enemy was reading her movements. Gambo blocked all the attacks with his body, a skill completely different in nature from the 3 described. This is a single skill. The protagonist used his telekinesis and stopped all the attacks. All the bullets hung in the air. He asked his friends if they were okay.